Nelson Storm, please, a warm applause.
Might have to lift this up for Colin, I think it's a little low. It's wonderful to be here. I was in Paris yesterday for a gathering of writers, journalists, politicians to talk about what had happened. And there's no question there's a lot of solidarity in Paris over what happened to Charlie Hebdo, but there's also quite a bit of confusion about what the right strategy is. People really don't quite know what to do. And as president of PEN International, which is to say 30,000 writers, 150 PEN centers, including the Netherlands PEN Center and all the others that are here, in 110 countries, we see this every day. There's the big idea of free expression, which we defend. We defend absolutely untrammeled freedom of expression. But since 1921, we also believe strongly that it's important not to produce hatred among people. And that balance between untrammeled freedom of expression and not producing hatred, there's no rule, there's no law, it's different in different places. There are countries around the world where it doesn't work at all. There are countries where it works, but it works in different ways. So there's the universal freedom of expression, and then there are all the different ways of doing the freedom of expression, and then there are the people who don't want to do it at all. So the end result is that there are about 850 writers, including journalists, on our list who are in prison or in danger, and there are about 200 journalists being killed every year. You know, there's always a sort of a gun targeted, or whatever it was, a bow and arrow targeted on writers, but the aim changes over time, and at the moment it's moved towards journalists, particularly unknown journalists who can't really fight back because they don't know people, they don't know how to defend themselves. And it's very important to understand this one thing, which is you've just seen this incredibly awful incident in Paris, but don't fall into the trap of thinking that most people are killed or imprisoned because of religious extremism or Islam. In fact, the vast majority of the journalists killed are not killed because of anything that has anything to do with Islam. It's a very small part of that. So don't get sucked into the idea that, you know, there's this war and it's the only war. There are a lot of people who would like us to think that way, that we have to think about the single enemy and stop thinking about the rest of what's going on, which is why our host tonight quite rightly pointed out is we put out a press release saying a censors march for free expression. You know, because there was Saudi Arabia, and there was Egypt, and there was Russia, and there was Turkey. These are all people who are putting lots of people in jail and either killing or allowing people to be killed. And in fact, tomorrow morning in Saudi Arabia, one of the governments marching the other day in Saudi Arabia, Raif Badawi will receive another 50 lashes of the 1,000 lashes, which he will receive every Friday until it's done, if he survives that long. So, beware, really beware, the declarations that that a war has been declared on us by Islamic extremism and we declare a war on Islamic extremism. Because remember, we also declared a war on organized crime about 20 years ago, which ended with them running the banks. And then we declared a war on drugs, which turned into high comedy. And then we declared a war on terrorism after the terrible events in New York, which has resulted in disorder and more terrorism. So this is not the approach, because this idea of declaring war is a very old-fashioned Maginot Line idea. We're going to declare war on it. We're going to defeat them. And what that really says is the governments will call in the security services and the armies, and enormous amounts of money will go into building up security services. And the result we've seen in the last 14 years is a real shrinkage of freedom of expression in the West, done by our own governments, not by the people we're supposedly at war with. So, yes, we have to deal with this enormously difficult problem, and with the macabre collection of reasons that writers and journalists are killed. We have to deal with all of that. In order to deal with it, we have to remain extremely, while being sad before tragedy, we have to be very calm, very, very tough, very, very sophisticated, and go at it in a very precise way, which may have to do as much with education in our own schools as anything else, rethinking why these things are happening, what is happening, how can we struggle against that, and what's happening in Russia, and what's happening in Turkey, and what's happening in Mexico, and what's happening in Honduras, where a lot more people are being killed. So this terrible thing in Paris, we laid flowers, a whole group of writers, at the Charlie Hebdo office yesterday morning, before going to a major public meeting. Before this terrible event happened, people were being killed in all these other places and were continuing to being killed. So, solidarity, but care, calm, toughness, sophistication. And so in that context, I think that the Oxfam Novid PEN Awards are exactly the right thing. They're exactly at the core of what needs to be talked about today. And in a few minutes, you're going to meet one of the 3 journalists who work on the front line and who has won one of the 3 awards this year. But first comes something really remarkable, which is PEN's Free the Word speech. This comes, this is done every year. Freedom of speech matters every year. It matters every minute. But what's astonishing about this week is that every single person, certainly in Europe, but I think in many places around the world, is thinking about freedom of expression. Don't believe that governments in democracies talk about freedom of expression all the time. They don't. They find it quite annoying and rather disturbing. But at this moment, everybody is thinking about it, wondering about what's happening and what to do. And so this is exactly the right moment and the right person to give this year's Free the Word speech. All of us, I have to say, at the Writers Unlimited Festival at Oxfam Novid, Netherlands PEN, and if I may say, at PEN International, speaking for 30,000 writers around the world, are very honored to be able to welcome to the stage now Karl Uwe Knausgård. Thank you.